Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode from Pro Engineering. This is going to be another installment of the buyer's guide, and it's going to feature a flashback from the early 90s, the Tyco Fast Traxx. Now, I believe what we're looking at here are two different generations of the vehicle because they're both frequency 27 and perhaps not the version of the Fast Traxx that you'd be more inclined to see. Usually they came with a very aerodynamic and we'll call it 90s body, but I'm personally more attracted to the Nissan Hardbody variant of this truck. The Hardbody, of course, is simply taken off the Tyco Bandit, so it's a very, very similar body. However, this particular version of it is the Series 3 version of the Bandit, and I believe there's different mounting for this application, so I don't know if it's a direct fit, but cosmetically, it is the same body shell. So first things first, let's address the elephant in the room. This vehicle doesn't have tires, it has Traxx, like a tank would, and that means it drives like a tank would. Unfortunately, it required two of these to make one operational. This is our operational one here. This one's got a bad transmission on one side, and the body is worse for wear. In fact, both bodies are in pretty bad shape. But I didn't have a radio, but fortunately, I did have the old radio from my 27 band Tyco Typhoon. Now, the Typhoon uses a lift fan right here, but in the case of the Fast Traxx, we'll just use the forward and reverse of the Typhoon. And keeping the Fast Traxx on here, just a side note, this does run the 9.6V battery right there. It is missing one of the little tabs here on the battery door, but it seems to stay put. When the car is turned on, you'll see the light right there in the bed area. And I'll just lift it up a bit here just to show how this works. So we'll click the left side and the right side. And reverse. So technically, if we do left and right, it'll just do that spin on the desk. I never had one as a kid in the 90s. I was really never into this car, but I've gotten a lot of requests of people asking me to look at the thing, and it's definitely a very interesting vehicle. What's funny is that the car still very proudly displays 9.6V turbo, 9.6V turbo. And whereas the Bandit or the Turbo Hopper did have your turbo, oops, it's still on, still had your turbo button or your turbo speed, this one doesn't really do that. Now, even the commercial shows, oh, you know, you've got your 9.6V power, and it shows a little red bar that denotes your tacking the thing out. From what I can tell, this car doesn't really have a turbo setting. This is simply one speed forward, one speed reverse. With that said, let's shut the car off now before we have a amusing incident. This vehicle does have a two-speed trans. You've got your high and you've got your low. I did want to mention as well that I thought this transmission was completely bad. I just realized that if I take it out of low and put it into high, it runs fine. That is very cool that it does have that two-speed transmission. What's also interesting is that it has two motors, and that makes perfect sense since you would want to run one side independent of the other. Unfortunately, without pulling the motor, I can't really tell you what it is, but it does have that size. We do see some springs at the rear, so the vehicle does have rear suspension, but at the front, it does not. There is no suspension in the front. There is some illusion of molded springs right there, but they're just cosmetic. What's interesting as well is that this vehicle has no bumper. I mean, it has this little nub, which I guess is enough. And perhaps Tyco was betting on the fact that you would crash the Traxx into something versus the car. Speaking of the Traxx, this is probably nearing 30 years of age. And from what I have seen on eBay, it's pretty difficult to find these with bad Traxx, which is kind of a testament to the quality of rubber that Tyco was using. It's pretty remarkable. The transmission is interesting because even though it does have that rear suspension, it also articulates. So it is going to allow us to rotate back and forth. Now this truck unfortunately is missing a spring, but you do see that articulation, which is a neat little addition to help the thing perhaps get a bit more traction. I can't imagine these are very good on rocky surfaces, but if you've got a lot of grass or dirt, fine gravel, I'm sure this probably would perform a heck of a lot better than any wheeled RC car like these. Something that I didn't notice earlier on in this video is the fact that this one here has the large cutout in the bed like the 3rd generation Bandit. But looking at the orange one, we can see that it does not have the large cutout. Upon doing some further research, I discovered that it doesn't really matter what color the body is. There are plenty of yellow ones that have this earlier style of rear area and vice versa. The black truck was the 49 megahertz version and has this truck's paint scheme, so I believe that this is the earlier variant than this. Now, I have only been able to find 3 different colors. The red, it's showing up reddish here, but it's more of a darker red orange, as well as the neon yellow. It appears to be there's just those 3 iterations. Not really too much more to say on these vehicles, so let's go ahead and take it for a spin. Moving fast. All that was in low. I don't know how fast this thing is going to be. That's in high now. I was really surprised to see how much fun these were to drive. I never really cared about them when they were new, and I did have some friends that had them, but they never struck a chord with me. You know, I had my Tyco Bandit, and I think by the time this came out, I had my Midnight Pumpkin, so it really wasn't something that I was eyeing. But I have to say that they were a lot of fun to drive. But with that said, it's not something that I'm particularly interested in. But the question is, should you get one? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you had one as a kid or wanted one as a kid, of course, go get one. I mean, I had my Bandit when I was a kid. Still the same one. So really, if there's any kind of sentimental attachment to this vehicle, what I say has no bearing. You should go out and get one. Get one in the color that you want, in the body style that you want, whether it's the race car, whether it's this one here, or whether there's a third variation of this called like the Extreme or the Super Fast Traxx. Locate the one you want. Prices do not seem to be too bad. These were fairly inexpensive. I want to say that this was around 30 and around 30 as well. They did not come with radios, and I was very lucky that I actually had my old Typhoon radio. In fact, the stock one looks just like this, minus the lift fan on the back. But these two are not without their flaws. You got this big chunk missing there. The entire back of the body is just split down the side. It's a really, really big damage there. This one here is even worse. It's just completely split through right there, as you can see. And the entire C-pillar is missing. I mean, unless you're looking at one of these to turn into a hobby grade RC, which I've seen, there's a couple channels that have done this, then you want to get yourself a bit of a nicer one. I don't think that they're bad cars to drive either. I mean, like I'd said, it seems to be pretty easy to find them with good treads on them. And as long as you can find a radio, or if they have the radio with the dual sticks, like I said, this is from a different car. It's still 27 megahertz. These are both 27 megahertz. You should be able to get one for a pretty reasonable price. If you are more into looking at them versus driving them, then you're probably spending a little bit more money on the more desirable version, which would be one that obviously doesn't have its decals all ruined. To my knowledge, at this point, you are not able to get reproduction decals, but if there is significant demand, then companies like MCI Racing would be pretty willing to make a set of decals for these vehicles. So that means if you're a collector, get yourself a really nice one. If you're someone that just wants to relive their childhood, get yourself one that works. And if you're looking at modifying one of these, then who cares? Get yourself one that has the tank treads and a body, and then you should be good to go. Overall, a very 1990s vehicle. And I would say that, and I don't blame this vehicle at all on this, but this really marks the beginning of the end for the consumer, or what everybody calls the toy grade RCs. This still has a bit of character and lightheartedness, we'll call it, that the consumer grade RC cars had back in the day, like the Tyco Bandit. And, you know, it behaves, I would say, like a grasshopper. So think of this as kind of your last Tamiya grasshopper before things really started, you know, being all about cost cutting and really, really mass marketing and silly gimmicks and all that. So, you know, this is the last gasp of the quality made RC cars from the 1990s in this segment. And we're looking probably at the end of the silver age of RC with these guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very enlightening to try this car out, especially something that I really never gave the time of day back in the day. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.